We got line one, Jeremy, I think, here from St. Louis, Missouri. Jeremy?
Hi, Mom.
How are you?
Oh, hi, Tracy. Hey, Martin.
Hey.
Hi. Before I ask my question, just want to say sorry about the whole Texas school board.
We don't blame you.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
yes, we're sorry too.
one of the few good things that may come out of that is that the state is so damn broke we may not be able to afford those stupid textbooks after all. So,
Yeah, Illinois got that problem too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But my question was about evolution being tied into atheism. I know that there are atheists that don't accept evolution. I think it's fair to say that the majority do.
Right.
But there are also many theists that do accept evolution. And in regards to there being a connection with evolution and atheism, I know Tracy on a previous show said that there was I think the term she used was a non-factor in regards to theism and religion, specifically I think she mentioned Christianity. But I'm not trying to throw you guys on the show against each other, but I've seen shows where you have the Darwin fish on the desk in front of you.
Sure.
And that's kind of well, at least to me, it's implying that evolution destroys God, and that at least gives me that impression. And I was just wondering if you could kind of talk on that, because I think it's a reasonable question, because there are many great thinkers that differ on this question. I mean, if you could ask Stephen Jay Gould the question, he would most likely say, I mean, what's the problem? But if you were to ask Dawkins, well, he wouldn't have that answer.
Okay, Jeremy, with regard to, okay, first of all, you understand atheism is not believing in God, correct? We're on the same page. Okay, and then the question is, how would evolution impact whether or not someone believes in a God? The only way that I can think of that it would have that impact would be if a person attributed speciation to God, correct? Okay, so you've got some people who are attributing speciation to God, and they're doing it from a creationist standpoint, because as you say, there's other Christians who accept evolution, so they see God as responsible for speciation through evolution. So you're appealing, there's an appeal to a very tiny group of Christians who accept really hard creationism and say that, this is what God did. If evolution hits that person, it's possible for that person's theism to be impacted by a theory like evolution. So they see that, oh, there is this real explanation that I can see works, and it's not what I thought God did. And if a lot of their belief in God hinges on that creationism, then they will be impacted. And there certainly are people who contact us and say, I learned about evolution and became an atheist. So for them, I'm sure that in their head that was very connected. But the reality is, you're operating from a fallacy when you accept creationism. So when you're attributing it to God with zero evidence, that's the error. It's not because you haven't seen evolution yet, it's because you're believing something you shouldn't be believing in the first place. So if they were able to see the fallacy in that without ever seeing evolution, if they ever investigated it and said, you know what, there's no reason for this, for me to believe this, that would tear them away from that as well. It's just that they didn't see that. But the fact is, they believed something that shouldn't have been believed based on zero evidence, and that was why evolution impacted them, because they were in a fallacy that they didn't recognize to begin with.
You kind of had to jump into it.
I'm sorry, what?
Since there's I guess you're trying to say since there's no evidence that to believe it, that's the key issue.
I believe that's the problem, because if they were hinging their belief in God on an idea of creationism for which they have no evidence, then they've got a problem already outside of evolution. I mean, they should, in my mind, they should be seeing that. Whether or not they ever accept evolution, they should be able to see clearly that there is no evidence to be believing what they're believing. That's the problem. But they will connect that. There are people who have said, once I recognized evolution was true, I just gave up belief in God, because they were hinging that on creationism. But really, to me, the problem is the fallacy that they were hanging on to. And if evolution made them see that fallacy, that's fine. But they should have been able to have that fallacy demonstrated to them, regardless of whether or not they adopt any other, idea of speciation.
Yeah. I think Dawkins' point was that, his quote from Blind Watchmaker, which is that evolution does not necessarily lead to atheism, and there is not a necessary link between the two, but evolution does make it possible to be an intellectually satisfied atheist. And what he means by that is that it does give valid and confirmable, non-religious explanations for the diversity of life. But you're right. There are a number of theists, theistic evolutionists, and most creationists absolutely hate them. So I think that what you're looking at in creationism is that creationism, you have to remember, is more of a doctrinal response to of evolutionary science, and it didn't really become very aggressive until after Darwin's theory was published, and then in the last century and a half. So it wouldn't say, I don't think that there is a necessary link, but for an atheist, evolution just does make it easy to understand that you don't need invisible magic beings to explain these things. And it isn't just evolution either. I think that any real valid exploration into the sciences will help you understand the natural world better, and the more you know, the less you have to fall back on supernatural or magic explanations for things.
Right.
Because many times what you're doing with those explanations, those beliefs, you're just filling gaps in knowledge. And the problem that I see now with all of us living in what should be a rational age, a scientific age, is that people still will fill gaps in their knowledge with beliefs rather than scientific knowledge, because there are things about the beliefs that are emotionally satisfying, that address particular psychological needs that they might have. And science, if it does anything well, is very good at throwing cold water on human self-importance. And I think one reason that creationists dislike evolution so much is that it punctures this whole notion that we are somehow special little snowflakes, that we are the special creation of some loving celestial being that has put all of this here for us, and that we're at the center of it all, and it's really all about us all the time. Evolution essentially says we're part of nature, and we've come and we will go, and something will come along to replace us. And it's a big cycle, and someday it will end.
What I think is really sad about what you're saying, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but what strikes me really sadly is that the fact of our being able to see ourselves as special is like meaningless in the framework of religion. It's like, so it's just in your head. Like, it doesn't matter that human beings see human beings as special. I mean, if God doesn't see you as special, you're worthless. And if it's just you, then it doesn't matter. And that to me is like the huge dehumanizing aspect of it, to say that if you believe your life is meaningful, if you believe your life has purpose, if you believe that your life has worth, it doesn't matter because you're just a human being. And only if God values it does it matter. And to me, that just pisses all over humanity. I mean, I don't even know how a nice way to say it. It is dehumanizing.
But that's the goal of religion, is to tear down the esteem of the believer so as to reconstruct it with religion at the center of it.
Correct.
So, and then once it's kind of got it hooked into you that way, it's really hard to give that up.
Yeah.
It really is hard. So.
But to answer your question, I think the Darwin fish is probably put up in response to creationist, theistic arguments. Yeah. Not necessarily that it is some big blow to theism overall.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have no doctrines, we have no dogmas. There are no catechisms or requirements that we all march in lockstep with the things we believe about the world and us in it. The only thing that I think we really do agree upon pretty reliably is that we don't think that any gods exist. And beyond that, we will argue heatedly amongst ourselves just as much as we will with believers.
Yes, we do.
So.
Well, thanks for clearing all that up. It really
Sure. Well, thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate your call.